Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. I'm Dr. Grant Van Albrecht, and I'm the CEO of Scared So What Limited. Today's episode is all about transformation within policing. What is the future? Well, it's personal, and it has to be about the people. And that's what we want to talk about today. I've got two wonderful leaders from the Metropolitan Police, and I really want to make this episode about them and keep it very positive and light. We'll talk about why in a few moments as well, too. But let's get started and let's introduce ourselves to Hannah Wheeler, and Kirsty Mead. Hannah, would you like to say hello?
Hi, Dr. Grant. Hi, Kirsty. Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Wheeler. I was a serving Metropolitan Police officer for 32 years up until April this year, when I retired from policing. And I'm now doing kind of little bits and pieces here and there and thinking about how I can do more work and more engagement and inclusivity with compassionate leadership. So
That's incredible.
later.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna dive into that, aren't we? So, well, thank you. I appreciate you being here with us today. And Kirsty, would you like to say hello?
Afternoon, everybody. Kirsty Mead. I have done 24 and a half years in the Met Police. Recently taken a career break back in July this year. And now I've been working with executives, coaching, just around my 4-pillar approach around health, well-being, and helping people survive through burnout and everyday daily pressures, really. So yeah, that's me.
It's so good to have you here, and thanks to both of you for being on the show with us. Hannah, you also, if people look at you in LinkedIn, there's also a couple of letters behind your name. And I think they came from Her Majesty herself. Is that not correct?
Yes, they did. My Queen's Police Medal, which I was awarded. Thank you. It was awarded for leadership during the pandemic, or after the pandemic, actually. I volunteered to go and help the National Police Coordination Centre and was responsible for obtaining, procuring, sourcing and distributing personal protective equipment to national policing and overseas territories, and writing the guidance and variously all things PPE for what was initially going to be 3 months and then turned into 2 years.
2 years, the scars we all hold. Wow, that was no small task to do it for not only for the United Kingdom, but for others as well, too.
Yeah.
Incredible. You deserve that award.
Thank you.
Kirsty, you also have some alphabet letters behind your name. And we were just talking about that a little bit before the show started. Me being a doctor and with coaching, I would think that I understood, but I thought it just meant you were a fabulous change manager. But what does it actually mean?
Actually, Dr. Grant, I don't know myself, embarrassingly, but it's letters that the Chartered Management of Institute gave me for being now a qualified certified coach, equivalent to degree level. So, but thank you for asking. I will go away and find that out.
Well, I wonder how many people look at our LinkedIn profiles and are like, and what does that mean? And what does that mean? I do the same. So there we go. But it obviously is your earned accreditation, and you're a brilliant coach. I know that as well too. And obviously through looking at your profiles, people are looking for that guidance. People need that coaching and that understanding of how we can improve ourselves. And Kirsty, wonderful. Thanks for you to being that dedication and support to earning your credentials behind that. So, well, you both are very near and dear to my heart because if you haven't followed us on LinkedIn, there were some great announcements. Hannah and Kirsty both are the first ambassadors for personal change on behalf of our company. And if you know anything about Scared So What, we are the pioneers of personal change management and the first bespoke personal change model. So we've worked together over some time to actually learn and share together and to allow you to earn your accreditations. But what does it mean to you, Hannah? What led you to want to do that?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm thrilled and very, very proud and excited to be part of it. Having learned about Scared So What and then tried to kind of engender interest in it in my previous role, because it feels like a natural progression, and no change program ever addresses people, but people are ultimately what change is about, and people have to understand what it means for them personally. So actually to do personal change management in this way is fantastic, and it's a no-brainer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now that you have gone through it, we can actually continue to work together to affect more lives in police, fire, and emergency services personnel to try to help them embrace the changes that they're going through.
Mm.
Kirsty, the same over to you. What was your interest in going on the journey?
Yeah, I think change is super related to people and is personal. People I'm really passionate about. And what I find is the world is ever changing.
Yeah.
We've got so much change going on that is causing burnout, that is causing health and well-being issues. And having now been through the program, it is a dedicated, structured approach that can be put logically in people's minds to overcome that fear.
Yeah.
And to change successfully. As we know, there is a high rate of failing personal change.
Yeah.
And this really helps people have that streamlined approach and get through to the other side. So for me, I'm forever grateful. Again, it's protecting people and it's helping people get through to the other side.
Absolutely. And the three of us, we've talked a lot about this as well, too. The reason why we wanted to come on the show today, and, this could be just the first of many. We hope to have many others in police and fire and emergency personnel to come and find a place, a safe space to elevate your voice so that we can actually do good for the greater population. But we talked about this. We're seeing a lot of posts and comments and people that have great intentions, but the conversations that they're bringing up about police is just so negative. And I don't think that's a direction that we ever would like to go. And could you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree, Dr. Grant, it does feel a bit like a kind of negative spiraling echo chamber.
Yeah.
And it's important to bring positivity to that. Yeah. Because, without it, we're not going to make any progress at all.
Yeah.
People come first. People are at the heart of everything. They are the most important thing. So we need to raise them up and be positive and give them something positive to kind of hold on to, rather than this negativity kind of dragging them down.
Yeah. Yeah. Kirsty, you had talked about as well. There are others that had reached out to you as well, and you can see it yourself. And you gave me good guidance because I started to ask, who should we engage with? Who should we not? Because we want to keep the conversation, open, motivational. What is your thoughts on that?
I think it's really hard to get sucked into the vacuum of negativity, into that negative loop. One of the exercises I used to do on my training days, especially at the end, is to take people right back to why they joined the organisation. Now, this is not to ignore the challenges and the struggles that policing is experiencing, but there has to be hope.
Yeah.
There has to be, a small reflection of why we actually joined this job. And things like saving lives, having courage, being disciplined. And I think there's one thing I've recognized since stepping away from the organization, there is limited discipline. And what outside of the organization, inside the organization, you can see a high degree of discipline. And people, we need to be more rewarding of this discipline, of people's courage, people's discipline. You are actually saving lives every single day and taking that right back to that reward and recognition of a simple thanks every morning for the work that people do.
Yeah, that's so true. And even, those of us who are not in policing, there are so many out there that take the conversations negative about police force and police personnel and their service, etc. But you know what? The moment that you actually need them, they're always there for you. And how quickly we forget. And it's, as you said, and as we see on LinkedIn and social media, we see so much negative thrown at them. Actually, I think we should challenge, and I am throwing a challenge out to all those who are not serving to actually stand up and be an ally and support. And when you see the negativity, shut it down, because it does nobody any good. And these are the people that will be there when you need them and your most critical moments of life, and guarantee you, whether it's fire, police, or ambulatory, one of the three is going to meet you at one stage in your life. Promise. So let's show a little bit of a gratitude and try to give the conversation the true discourse that it needs, because these people, they work and they strive and they need help and they need support. And if we can raise and elevate the conversation, then we can change leadership within. Uh, so that's a little bit about what we want to do here today on this discussion. And I want to go to you, Hannah.
Mm.
You and I have known each other for a while now, and you have such a passionate view about leadership and merging that within compassion in itself. And something, the layperson outside of policing just really wouldn't associate with policing. But tell me a little bit about that and what it means to you.
Certainly. I've always been a huge advocate of compassionate leadership because it puts people at the heart of everything. And I have to say, it has sometimes been viewed as, at odds with the whole command and control structure in policing.
Yeah.
It doesn't do to show, emotion, or be soft with people. But actually being compassionate doesn't mean being soft or weak. It doesn't mean shying away from decisions or anything.
Yeah.
It's actually a discipline. It's being able to invest in strengthening and improving others and making their lives better. This benefits sort of collective well-being over time, leads to a positive culture, and a real positivity is allowed to flourish. But leading with kindness and compassion, it means speaking the truth. Often when it's difficult, honoring candor in yourself and in others, being able to understand and listen when people come to you, and sometimes choosing to be uncomfortable, choosing to put yourself in that uncomfortable space, but not shying away from delivering difficult messages, but doing it in a way that allows for engagement and reflection. So people don't feel like they're being told to do something, they're being engaged, they're being, having things explained to them, why they're doing it. And I know one of the comments from some of my leaders were that the young sort of Gen Z generation always ask why, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And my children do as well. But, actually, let's give people the reason. Let's give people the why.
Yeah.
Why are we doing it? We're doing it because of this.
Yeah.
And sometimes in policing, you are told to do something and you think, well, I'm doing something else. And then they're like, but something else becomes a priority. And it's around, okay, we make room for that. And then we come back to what we were doing, later. Yeah. But it's dealing with kindness. It comes from strength, both internal strength and shared strength. When we show compassion, it's from a place of, understanding and walking that journey with people.
Yeah.
Quick anecdote. I always used to make people laugh when they looked at my calendar at work because it had WTF written across it for Monday.
For real? WTF?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And everyone used to go, ooh, what's that? And I said, it's not what you think. I said, it's a reminder to walk the floor.
Interesting. To walk the floor.
To take time.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that.
No, no one ever does. Everyone used to think it was me leaving the room and going,
she's a hard leader. Exactly.
No, it's walking the floor. So it's reminding me every day to make time and space for others.
Yeah.
And, it could be in the middle of something and you might have to delay it slightly, but it's around going, connecting with people and being visible, because people won't know what sort of leader you are, compassionate or otherwise, unless they actually see you and they see what you're about. And you connect with people, you ask them what they're doing, how are they feeling that day, what are they working on, what's bothering them, what can I as a leader unlock for them, who can I go and speak to that's maybe given them some grief or a task that they don't really understand, what can I do? So
it's so true. I mean, and I remember, sorry to cut you, I remember I'm a veteran, so I remember being in the Navy, and it was exactly the same. I would think same structures, same discipline, hierarchy, rank structure, etc. in the military as in the police. And we weren't taught to think. We were actually taught to be just you do what you're told. So I love hearing what you're saying. And this was something you were able to display, obviously, for many years, right?
Yeah. But I want others to do it. I want people to think. Yes, they have to do as well, but I want them to think about what they're doing and think about how they then do the do, how they approach what you've asked them to do with, equal compassion and leadership, because we're all leaders. Compassion compassion gives us hope. That leads to greater confidence. That builds resilience, the ability to adapt. Policing and any emergency service work is enormously, emotionally, mentally, physically challenging. So when we lead with compassion and view our colleagues and our communities with compassion, then it just leads to a greater understanding of what other people are going through. And it just gives us that time and space to think, how do I want to approach this? How do I want to speak to this person?
Yeah. Well, I think about everything you're saying completely aligns with our research in leadership. And so much of leadership out there talks about the architects and the structures that you can, what kind of a leader do you want to be? Empathetic, compassionate, et cetera, et cetera. But in my PhD, I tried to say, well, what are the foundations though? What are the building blocks that we should be putting this upon? Is that transactional leadership, and is it transformational leadership? And that's what I came across with. And everything that you're saying, you've just echoed. You have to have a little blended balance of transactional, and police and fire and emergency, military is that way. I'm transactionally telling you what you should do. Then how do you shift right back over, which is everything you've just uncovered? Compassion, vulnerability, empathy. How do you lead transformationally? And that leads right into Kirsty's expertise as well, which is coaching. So at the heart of a transformational leader is the coaching ability, because that's the transfer of ownership. So Kirsty, what would you add on with what Hannah's just shared in leadership?
100%. So I think towards the last year within police, and especially as a detective superintendent, doing many coaching and mentoring sessions, and I had a mentor myself of a higher rank, and I coached many other juniors of other ranks. And I think for me, what was evident from a really early stage is when people come up with the answers themselves, they're even more driven to get the job done. And also, if you think about most of our problems, like 80% of our problems, those that are grafting, that are doing the actual work, they have the solutions. It's just having that time to step back and, as a leader, use a coaching method to get the staff to come up, leaders to speak last. And, when I touch on around psychological safety, if I'm a leader at the room and I'm speaking first, those of a junior rank will feel, oh, maybe I can't air my opinion now because the boss has this opinion. So it's just being aware of how you're coming across within a meeting or within sort of rooms as leaders, and having those open questions. So what do we think? What's the problem? And then it's stepping into that coaching of open questions and letting the teams come up with the solutions.
Yeah. But and I think that's brilliant, because that is, everything you're sharing is the foundation of transformational leadership. The elements that Hannah rightfully put forward: vulnerability, compassion, creativity, ideation, all of these elements. In essence, it's not about me as a leader. It's about my team members and their success. If I measure my success based off of their ability to climb and grow and promote, and when they do, then congratulations to all of them. It's not about me and my rewards. That's the transactional leader. And so how do we actually shift that? But I want to ask you both on this topic of leadership. What you've just described, Hannah and Kirsty, within the supporting elements of coaching as well too, that sounds like a perfect world. And I even know in global business that is a perfect place to be, but we're not always there. And as we see so many advocates that are out on social media, etc., highlighting the big issues that are relatively, completely and factually honest, they're happening: police wellness, police mental well-being, police suicides, police stress, anxiety, fear, worry. What we've just described doesn't sound like that is there. And I just wanted to hear it from the two of you. How real is that in your world and your experience? And do you believe the conversation we've just talked about is the way forward?
Well, I absolutely do. And I believe it is this conversation. It's this ongoing conversation. It's learning about your teams, your people, learning about what makes them tick as individuals. Because what might upset somebody, a particular call or something they've seen, it might not bother somebody else. It depends on people's life experiences, what's going on for them at that point in time. You know, they might have to go and deal with a suicide, and they might have, had that happen in their own family. Nobody knows, but we do have to encourage this culture of openness. We need to create kinder and more trusting and inclusive cultures, so that we can support and understand, the needs of all our colleagues. We need to understand what's going on for them, and I used to say to my team, we need to celebrate the small successes and the big successes. Sometimes someone just turning up for work, whatever time they come in, is a success.
Especially if the tubes are late.
Exactly. Given what they've got going on at home, caring for elderly parents, getting children to school, partners ill, working shifts, and then they come to work and they present, and we expect them to give 100%, and there's a lot going on for people, but they still have to come, and then they give their whole kind of emotional labor to whoever they're dealing with, whatever member of the public's called them, and then our support staff as well are dealing with the officers that are going through this, and they're getting that kind of vicarious trauma from them as well.
Well, and it's not fair. They go through everyday internal. So think of all the situations and scenarios that you guys, as police leaders and as police officers yourselves, at one point in your career, you walked the beats, you did it. You did the jobs. Think of the things you see, the emergencies, the situations, the crimes, et cetera, and then you have a glowing public who's actually sitting here abusing you as well too. It's a thankless job, is it not?
It is, but you have to talk about it. You absolutely have to. I was talking to somebody towards the end of my sort of service, and talking about these thoughts that were coming in my head about things I dealt with, at a very early stage in my career, and they were like, "That's not normal," and I thought it was just my brain preparing me for something else, But I did need some counselling. I needed some counselling to unpack what had gone on then, because we didn't ever get counselling when I joined. You went to deal with something, and then you came back to the station, wrote it up, and then you went out to deal with something else. Particularly when you were a probationary officer, you were constantly, in and out, and nobody really said, "How are you? How did you feel after dealing with that sudden death?" Or
that would be a sign of weakness.
Delivering that death message,
Yeah.
You probably would have said, "Yeah, I'm fine," but it would have been nice if someone had asked. And I think that's where we're a lot further forward now in our current culture, aren't we, Kirsty? Where people do ask, probably not enough, but we are starting to understand the effects of trauma, the day-to-day trauma, without having any space to decompress.
Well, it's not just work, is it, as well too? It's not just being on the job as a police officer. It is what you just shared with you. It's your spouses, it's relationships, it's family, it's life in general. Imagine being the spousal, familial support of a person serving. That's a challenge in its own right. Kirsty, on top of what Hannah just shared, what's your experience? Because I'm cognizant you both didn't work in the same departments or divisions.
So similar to Hannah, but I just want to touch on, since stepping away from policing and seeing it in the corporate world, and something that I feel would really, really help in policing. So working with construction companies and call data centres, suicide is 4 times higher than the national average. And I was super privileged to go to an event where there was senior members of Google, CEOs, a super high leader within Christie's. They were on stage in front of their teams talking about mental health and vulnerability.
There you go.
And you know what? The teams there were listening to their senior leaders being vulnerable, expressing the burnout, expressing the difficulties, and having those open conversations with their staff around what can we do to make this better. And I just feel we need a little bit more, not to be vulnerable, but to share some form of vulnerability with our teams, because we know it's happening. We know people are going home, they're doing emails until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. It happened to me. I got into a state of second year of superintendent. It felt as if, I was working round the clock. I was in a authorizing officer responsibility. I had operational teams, and I started to get overwhelmed, and there was no off button. But sharing that with my teams gave my teams permission to share back how they were feeling. And I think that is something that we need to push harder in policing, especially after seeing it in the corporate world, where the effect was a stand-up applause from hundreds of staff.
Well, you know, and it's inviting and it's invigorating. You're so right. I was doing a keynote speech last month to a group of C-suite leaders. And in the room, there were revenue officers, sales officers, operational officers, CEOs. I had about 60 people in the room. And my talk was on what we always talk about, transformational leadership and change. And I asked them, I said, raise your hand if you've ever been taught how to achieve transformation in your organization. Of course, nobody raised their hand. We don't teach that. And I said, raise your hand if you've ever been taught how to manage personal change for yourself. And everybody just looked at each other like, wait a minute, we're leaders. And I said, exactly. That's what I want you to do here. If we can be real and if we can understand that we haven't been taught these skill sets, they don't teach it in business school. They don't teach it in university. They don't teach it in everyday life. In most corporates, and I know in military, they didn't teach us that either. So, but yet these are the things we all experience. You know, we experience change every single day. And Kirsty, what you just described, I can tell you 100% academically, the foundation of transformational leadership includes vulnerability, because there's a psychological openness that says if somebody's allowed to let me in, then I can come in and then I can also share. And now you're starting this conversation, this open relatedness of learning, still respecting hierarchy, still respecting authority, very much so, but I can actually learn in that environment. So you're absolutely right. And it's been part of the orchestrated conversation for years now. We started years ago in diversity, inclusion, and engagement. And in some countries, unfortunately, that's starting to be repressed now. But if I'm hoping we can champion and keep that back alive, because coaching, openness, compassion, you know, credibility that we're adding to the strengths of what we're trying to do, that's how we actually lead and grow together. Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about, you know, leadership as well too, but Kirsty, you have a passionate conversation about creating psychological safety. And you and I've had these discussions with Hannah as well too. Can you tell me what that means for you and for policing?
Yeah, and I guess to those that do watch this, I'll ask you one question. Do you feel you can be yourself at work? I'll leave that question with you and come back to it at the end of the discussion. But in policing, I think it's ever more important to have that psychological safety. You deal with things that are super high stakes. You deal with slow time investigations. And it's having that ability to speak and to air your views without ridicule. It provides better decision making, having better outcomes for the public. And it's about having that more truth in the room. And I know, Hannah, you and George used to do a lot around diversity of minds and cognitive diversity. And I take it right back to Rebel Minds, the book Rebel Minds. I think that, you know, all three of us have probably read this book. And when we have a greater diversity of thoughts, we have better outcomes. But to have a greater diversity of thoughts, you need to have that psychological safety for those people to speak up.
Yeah.
And be able to share their views. And I guess for me, it's about having the courage to know that I can take those risks, but feel supported if it goes wrong. Now, I'm not saying that it's an open card to make mistakes, because that's where leaders need to be setting the standards of this is the standard, but let's be innovative and let's take those risks where we can, as long as we justify them. But if people don't feel safe and supported when the wheel does come off, so to speak, those risks are not going to be taken. Therefore, how do we grow and how do we be innovative? I know Stephen Bartlett talks a lot about failure. Failure is the art of success.
So true.
Mm.
How do we fail safely in policing?
Yeah.
Or are we doing what we've always done because that's safe?
Well, it's not safe, is it? Because people are leaving.
Exactly. I was chatting to an executive not so long ago, and for me, psychological safety is one of the elements of culture.
Mhm.
And this person said to me, "I have a business to run. No time to think about culture."
Oh, I love that.
So, you know, we do have those mindsets out there, and you know, the reason why we have psychological safety is for resilience, for lack of burnout, for people to grow, you know, for people to have, you know, continuous learning. So the data is there. We need it. And yes, there are barriers within policing. We've got the rank structure, we've got the fear of discipline, and then it's almost like the culture of perfection. We have to be perfect.
Mhm.
And I just want to share with you a mnemonic. Policing always has a mnemonic.
Mhm.
Good, please.
That there is one way, and I hope somebody from policing does take this away as a leader and uses this to create better psychological safe environment. So if you're thinking about having a team meeting for decision making, rationales, etc., it's called SAFER, and the S is around setting the tone. So as a leader, how are you setting the tone for psychological safety? How are you setting the standards? How are you setting the expectations? The A is for ask the question. So if there is silence, silence means danger. People do not feel safe to talk if there's silence. Ask your people, what feels off here today? Where could the wrong go?
Yeah.
And then the F is around frame the work. What does good actually look like? How can we get there? So you're posing these really open questions for your teams to answer there. And then the E is around enabling your teams to perform. This was great. And I know, Hannah, you've done this a lot in your training sessions, especially in the promotion ones. As a superintendent, you're an enabler. You are there to enable your teams to perform to the best. Going round, walking the floors. How are you today? How better can I help you today? Do you need anything? Can I give you anything? We serve our people. You know, we are there to serve them. They don't serve us. They are doing the grafting. We support them. And then R is around respond. So, and I guess this is where they brought in reflective practice within the professional standards, is if a mistake is made, how are we responding? Is the leader jumping straight to discipline? And be mindful of this, or we actually being more open and saying, right, okay, it's gone wrong. How can we reflect on this? And then having the right outcome. So that's just something I wanted to share with everybody, and hopefully that can be utilized better within the policing arena.
Absolutely. I think that's incredible. And I love some of these elements as well too. As you know, because you're both certified and you're our ambassadors of personal change, Scared So What is a critical reflection model.
Yeah.
And it's the first one made for individuals. And what we're trying to do is to empower and equip people. If you can ride a bike, if you can walk, some of us not very well, but if you can walk, if you can run, if you can drive a car, or if you can learn to do something of a cognitive skill set, you can learn how to manage personal change for yourself. And this is where I'm hoping that together with your great leadership, we can go into police departments and divisions and units and actually give this over to them so that we can facilitate that critical reflection you rightfully have been talking about. You know, scared. You don't have to be scared to embrace your feelings. You just have to be brave enough to learn. Positive, getting a promotion. And I'm sure in the police as well too, being promoted to the next level, that's scary sometimes. And especially the first day you put on the new uniform and the new epaulets, whatever your credentials are, you're like, oh gosh, everybody's looking at me now, right? Can I do this? We've talked about imposter syndrome as well too. So how do you reflect on your feelings so you can make an informed decision versus an assumption? And then to that point, so what? What's my plan? What can I do about it? And I think all of these elements, whether it's Scared So What for critical reflection and personal change, whether it's compassionate leadership and learning how to be vulnerable and actually share, and then to Kirsty, creating the psychologically safe place. How do we support it all together is through coaching so that people can speak their minds. It is, in most times, it's probably situations of life and death within police, and I'm sure it can be. The military was the same. But even in the military, we allowed people to speak, and we allowed people to have thoughts, because that's where ideation comes from. And somebody might have a better idea. And that's how we grow. And I often ask people, what's the difference between change and transformation? And I get a lot of different descriptions. Some of them are quite comical, and mostly from the C-suite. But I sum it up just like this. If you can think of a little caterpillar, a caterpillar doesn't change to become a better caterpillar. He or she transforms into a cocoon of chaos. There's constant differentiation going on, constant ideation, constant restructuring that's going on, and then it transforms into a beautiful butterfly. Now that sounds like a fun and nice, peaceful little story, but the message is to change means you can always go back, which is why so much change fails. At the leadership, we communicate the change and we assume everybody's going to follow through or will be on board. And what really happens is the people go back to their comfort zones until they're forced. And that's where the stress, anxiety, fear, and frustration, and you see probably exactly the same results within policing that goes all the way to the extremes, which is either A, I'm leaving the police force, or B, suicide, which God forbid we hope will never happen and we can prevent. But then how do we actually get people to embrace that? So to change means you can go back, but to transform means you can only go forward. And I think that's something that through all the elements we've described today, these are the elements we need to put into place. And we can. We can. If we're brave enough to have these conversations. I've got Kirsty, I've got Hannah, two veterans in police who have lived these experiences. And together, can we go facilitate these conversations?
I love that analogy. I love that analogy about the butterfly and the cocoon of chaos. But one of the things that I learned, and in echoing what Kirsty said about psychological safety, is it's when you do get promoted, you get promoted on your potential to perform in the role. But when you put the uniform on and the epaulets and things, everyone assumes you know absolutely everything from day one. But you're actually, you don't really know anything at that point.
Yeah.
But I found it was always useful to just fess up and go, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Even if someone asked me something, I go, that's a great question. I don't know the answer at the moment, but I will find out and I will come back to you because actually I need to know as well. So it's just around admitting that you don't know, because sometimes people don't like to appear that they don't know the answer. So they'll make something up, or they'll say, oh, we'll worry about that later, or just something. But I think you just have to show that candor and honesty, don't you? And go, that's a really good question. I don't know at the moment. I should know, but I don't. But I will find out.
I love that. You said it at the end, but I will find out.
I will find out, and I will come back and let you know. And I'll let everyone know, because if you don't know and I don't know, probably there's loads more people that don't know. So yeah. But
Kirsty, in police, is that seen as a sign of weakness if we share our truth?
100%. I always remember my first AO, authorizing officer job, and the team wanted some really high authorities, and they phoned in. They were like, boss, I've got this. And I was like, right, look, I'm going to be honest. Let's slow this down. This is my first one. And when I was on a training day with them, they approached me and they said, boss, that is the best leader you could ever be, because there is far too many. And generally it is male, because it is quite a male dominating environment. Not to say, some males haven't, and I don't want to really put that out there, but in their experiences feeding back to me, they then knew I was authentic and genuine, and that I wouldn't give them any makeups or anything. I would always be open and honest with decision making and rationale, and a bit like what Hannah said, very open and honest, especially with all the change going on with the different projects. Decisions are being made, And I think it is really important to go back to that why we are doing something. And if we can't engage with staff, be clear around staff. You know, there is a budget at the moment. So just be clear. Look, guys and girls, we have a budget. This is what we need to do. The decision is we're making this because of X, Y, and Z. But I just feel, you know, just more communication and clarity and being open and honest is just key.
Well, and you know, on top of that, that's an important, very important conversation, because a lot of times the budget is the cause of so much change. And change fatigue and change failure and change stress and anxiety. That's no different. Well, it could be different. So I don't want to generalize, but I wanted to say in the private sector, in business, we have that exactly same. So you have great CEOs and leadership and the C-suite teams, and you have mass amounts of people, and it's always the budget. That's the constant conversation of why we can't transform, why we can't be different, why we can't have more staff, why we can't have the training, why we can't have the counseling, etc., or the things that we need and the tools to do our jobs. But that said, there's still leadership. There's still coaching. There's still the time to listen. There's still empathy. There's still compassion. There are so many things that we can go to actually hear people and facilitate inclusion. And half the time, even though we can acknowledge the budget may be the issue or whatever it may be the issue, if we can actually just allow people to be heard, then it's not cooped up. That stress and anxiety is not stuck within. We can start to get that out. And from there, we can start to say, well, what else?
And that's a really critical point, actually, just being listened to. When my team in the Met were doing stay conversations, you know, with people thinking of leaving the Met, they would contact my team and they would speak to someone within 24 hours. And they would lay out their reasons why, you know, they were not happy or not comfortable, you know, and they were very often localized reasons. It wasn't, you know, they weren't paid well enough, you know, they didn't like the job, you know, you don't join policing or any emergency service for brilliant wages. You know, we join for a purpose because we want to help people. We want to make victims of crime life, you know, easier. But they just very often just wanted to get everything off their chest. And my officers would come back and say, I didn't actually do anything. And they'd say, but you listened to me. And no one else has taken the time to do that. You know, I tried to speak to my line manager that, you know, they said they were too busy. I tried to speak to someone else and they said, I can't listen to this. It's not for me. So they just wanted to listen, someone to listen with sort of compassion and empathy. And then say, you know, what would you like me to do? And sometimes they would go, nothing like that. That's fine. I've got it off my chest now. And I'm not going mad. I just wanted to tell somebody. But other times, you know, my officers would go and speak to people and say, you know, were you aware of this? You know, oh, I had no idea, you know, so then things could be put in place to support them. But just the act of being really, really listened to is very, very powerful. Very powerful.
And Kirsty, you're doing coaching. You've taken a leave, and you're really, I can see you strong on LinkedIn and socials. You know, your impact, your messaging is just so spot on, and the coaching capabilities. So I think that's something that in any industry is needed, you know, because so many people have the misconceptions on what true coaching is. And I've seen it a lot here in England. It's all about sport, you know, telling people what to do. Oh, that's not it at all. It may work in sport, but it does not work in everyday life. They're two different things. That coaching is transactional. Tell them what to do, teach them, be the best, keep going. But true coaching on the external side of that is, you know, the ability to foster that conversation, to pull it out from them. And I call it the transfer of ownership. What's your thoughts on coaching?
I think there's a huge, so what I've recognized in the last 4 or 5 months, there's a huge fear in the world of becoming the best version of yourself, because people start maybe at the bottom of the mountain and all they can see is the top of the mountain. But what they don't realize is the small steps we take gets us to the top of that mountain. And it's super simple stuff, super simple. I'll give you a quick example, right? So say somebody is addicted to milk chocolate, right? This is just a super quick example. Like I did it with a girl at the gym. Yeah.
Guilty.
And she wanted to get off chocolate, right? Because it was totally spiking her blood sugar. And what she found was she was making irrational decisions because her blood sugar was going absolutely crazy with her because she was addicted to chocolate, which was affecting her leadership ability to make quick decisions in work. So it's a super simple thing, right? So she was having milk chocolate. I said, right, come on then, Camilla, let's go to 70%. Kirsty, I can't do that. I said, just try it for me 1 week. And I said, I'll see you in the gym next Monday. So next month, she was like, Kirsty, I did it. I had 70%. I've done it. Now she is on 90%. Wow. Over 4 months, she hasn't had milk chocolate. And what she's found just through this super easy change, her food choices are better. She stopped the bread because of the sugar, right? So she's not having more sugar cravings. Her blood sugar levels in work, she's now having anything between 85 and 90% dark chocolate. She feels more steady, clear brain fog, so she's not having the mixed foods in her brain, and she's having better outcomes. Yeah. So, but she was like, I didn't even realize this. I didn't even realize.
Well, that's it. Most of the time we don't know, So we go on autopilot.
That one easy change, like nutrition. I am big on nutrition. I feel anything that we're trying to manage around us, if we can, it's almost like if you don't make time for your health, then be prepared to make time for your illness. Food is medicine.
That's so true. Well, listen, this is a great start of the conversation. And obviously, we're not going to solve the world of policing today. The conversation is about the future of transformation within policing is personal. And I think all the things we've been talking about here today about, allowing people to have a safe psychological place to speak their truths and their feelings and share that, but yet being supported by leadership that is compassionate, that is a little bit transactional and telling us what to do, but also a little bit more vulnerable and saying, well, okay, well, your voice, your opinion, your thoughts actually do matter. And if we get it all out together, then we can actually ideate and create something better for others. We have a long way to go in this discussion, I think. And with that in mind, there are other topics about, mental wellness and physical wellness and health of police, etc., and toxic leadership that, we're not here to poke you or to expose you, but we are here to softly talk about it and bring it forward to the front. And maybe you can learn something new about your leadership style and the way you're leading and how you choose to show up each day, because you have a choice as a leader. Just because you have the stripes and the epaulets doesn't mean that you have to be dictatorial. You actually have a choice of, how do I want to leave my mark on the world? And how am I measuring my success through the people that I promote up and I develop through the ranks in the future of policing? So it has to be personal. We've got to talk about that. But let's think, ladies, who would we like to see here on the show with us? Who would be the types of people within police forces and or in business that we would love to see champion this conversation? Can you tell us who?
I think probably someone from the National Police Wellbeing Service would be really good. And also the crossover between, mental fitness and wellbeing in sport, and the new psychological safety and safeguarding that's happening now in sport, and injury prevention. I think that would be really useful. There's so much crossover, I think. What about you?
Well, there's a lot of alliance to sport, isn't there? Doesn't matter if you're police, fire, ambulatory, or in just a civilian life. We all try to find a lot of direction from sport as well too. So that sounds great. That would be great. Kirsty, what are your thoughts?
I think after watching the Panorama documentary, I think for me, I would like to speak to and invite the sergeant rank in on how best they can be supported with those behaviours that have gone underground. Clearly, there needs to be more psychological safety, where people feel like they are being listened to and heard when they're unsure about members of staff and how they're actually going to be supported. It's a bit like our witness protection, right? It's feeling safe to disclose, but also supported that something's going to be done and they're not going to be brushed under the carpet, that I'm too busy to deal with this.
Absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow, those are great leads. And thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And, as we go forward, for all of those of you who are watching the show and who stumble on it even after today, we hope you find this information useful and helpful. And if you want to join us in continuing the conversation, if you are members of these areas, like Hannah had said, like wellness and police guidance, etc., even sports leadership, and sports mental health and wellness as well. And then to Kirsty's great guidance is, if you're in policing, the sergeant level, and I call the middle management. If you're in any of those levels, your boots on the ground, you're leading from within. And that's where true leadership needs to be at its best. We'd love to have you on the show. So reach out to Kirsty on her LinkedIn, Hannah Wheeler as well too, or even myself, Dr. Grant. Follow along with us. If you have something that you think is worthwhile, and you can help to remember to keep the conversation positive, because that's where we keep the psychological safety open, right? The minute we go negative, all of that starts to shut down and we put up walls, and we don't want to do that. We want to break down walls brick by brick. And so hopefully you can follow along with the great advice and direction of these two wonderful leaders. And I thank you so much for being here. It's a great privilege to have you as ambassadors for personal change. And I thank you again for your service. And people, I'm sure, will say that to you a lot, but you know what? You haven't stopped, have you? It doesn't stop. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for being with us today. I'm going to ask Kirsty to actually take us into a different way to close out a webinar.
So I've recently embarked on visualization, and I've been visualizing now for around 3-4 weeks, and trust me when this is super powerful. So what I would ask you all to do is to sit comfortably and put your hands on your knees, and I'm just going to start playing. So gently close your eyes where you feel comfortable to. Soften your gaze. First, breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Out through the mouth for 6. Again, in for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 6. Now bring to the mind the day that you've started your work. Where were you? What did the air smell like? Who were you hoping to become? See the faces of the people you serve. Not a crowd, just one person. Picture a moment when your work made their day safer, simpler, or lighter. Let that moment play like a short clip. Notice the detail that proves it mattered. A thank you, a breath of relief, a problem solved, a risk reduced. Maybe it was a reassurance visit, a safeguarding decision, a quiet word that prevented something worse from happening. Breathe in for 4, hold for 2, out for 6 seconds. Now remember a time you were tired but still showed up. You didn't have the perfect conditions. You had purpose. What value guided you? Courage, service, care, integrity. Let that word sit in the center of your chest. Say it silently to yourself. I lead with. I'm going to offer some statements. If they land, say them quietly in your mind. If not, let them pass. I do work that matters. I make people safer and futures brighter. Even on hard days, I act with care and integrity. My presence changes outcomes. I am allowed to feel proud of what I've given and achieved. Progress over perfection, service over ego. Every decision I take is a safeguard for someone's tomorrow. Now zoom out. Imagine a timeline of your career on a wall. Notice not just the big wins, but the steady dots. The follow-ups, the callbacks, the quiet fixes, the small kindnesses. That is the impact. That is leadership. See your future self 1 year from now, looking back at today. What are they grateful that you kept doing? What's one small habit they thank you for? Fix that one action in your mind. Make it specific and doable tomorrow. Now place a hand on your chest or simply notice the rise and fall of your breath. Offer yourself a simple truth. I am part of something bigger than me. I can choose the next right action. I am proud of the work I do and the person I am becoming. One last breath together. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. When you're ready, open your eyes. Take that word, that one action for tomorrow, and carry them out of this session. Thank you all for the work that you do. It matters more than you know. You saved a life today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm very relaxed. Ladies, have a great day. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.